And I believe we're live now. All right. Justin, Dr. Beckett, I know you always want me to call you Jim, but I just can't. It feels weird for me. And Ivan, thank you very much for joining. So, I don't know. I can probably speak for all of us. The National's right around the corner. I'm extremely excited. I keep rewatching old videos of people going to the National. But I wanted to get you guys on selfishly because I want more information. This is going to be my third year going, and every year it feels like I'm drinking from a fire hose. So I know a lot of people have a lot of questions, and I selfishly want to hear from people who have been going for years and years and have tons of information. And I've already gotten some teasers from Ivan, some really critical information that he might not share with us now. So we'll have to see what kind of nuggets we get. But real quickly, let's go around and kind of share how many years consecutively has everybody gone to the National. I just shared this is my third year. So Dr. Beckett, you want to kick us off?
Well, Jake, I've been to every single one, and I'm still drinking from the fire hose.
Ivan?
So consecutively, I'm starting from zero, but I attended 8 or 9 prior to missing last year for the first time in almost a decade. So definitely excited to make up for missing last year.
Awesome. Justin?
Yeah, and my first one was 2012, but I think I've hit them all since then. So this will be, minus the COVID year, this will be my 10th, I think.
Awesome. All right. So we got a good span of years. So the first thing that I want to hit on is kind of some of the low hanging fruit, some of the stuff that a lot of people are going to say, and I think we would be remiss to not touch on. Some simple things: wear comfortable shoes, make sure you've got a backpack, and maintain hygiene. Those type of low hanging typical things. Any topics like that I missed though? Let's go around. Is there anything that's like we have to hit on, but we don't want to get into too many details?
Jake, it'd be nice to bring a comfortable chair. Hard to do, but if you're going to be walking or sitting, both of them over a prolonged period of time.
Yeah, I was going to say there's a few booths that have gotten wise to that. Mel at the card bar is probably the first who started doing it, where they actually, instead of having their tables right on the limit, the tables are set in a little bit and they've got a bar that you can sit at. So it encourages browsing or sitting to open your wax there. Yeah, so looking for booths that have chairs also becomes its own smart sort of marketing by those that have them. I was going to add also, it's 2023. We're all walking around with these things constantly. And whether you're some sort of live streamer or whether you're just trying to coordinate with your friends or you're trying to keep up with the kids back home, your battery's going to have some issues. So getting one of those rechargeable battery packs or maybe 2 of those rechargeable battery packs and having them on hand, because the day may get longer than you plan. At first you're like, oh, I'm going to head home, at 3, I'm going to go back to my hotel around 2:30. And all of a sudden it's 4:30 and you're trying to coordinate your plans and your phone's dying. Having that rechargeable battery pack can make all the difference.
Yeah, you stole my thunder. I'm sure somebody in another podcast or video will make fun of me for saying something like that. The comfortable shoes thing is certainly number one. I think also just a little bit more broadly, but just be comfortable with being around a lot of people for extended periods of time. If you're on the show floor and you like to have your own personal space, that's not the best area to find that space. However, there are plenty of options, whether it's kind of on the outskirts of the show floor, if you duck out into the lobby, there's plenty of room to spread out there. And then there's also a second floor at the Donald Stevens Convention Center. which I think Ivan might have some pro tips on how to utilize that space the best. So yeah, it's just more broadly. It's packed. It's slammed. There's no getting away from the people as soon as the doors open Wednesday afternoon for the sneak peek. So that would be one thing. And then the other thing too is just something that I got an email about today. I'm sure that a lot of us did from the NSCC promotion folks, but the VIP tickets are running very low. And we might talk about the importance of time management later on. But if it fits within your budget, I can't stress enough the value of having that extra 30 minutes before the show opens to general admission to be able to get on the floor a little bit early and just kind of beat the rush and get your bearings a little bit before the crowds start. Because as soon as the doors open to everybody, you're going to see people literally running through the aisles to try and do whatever it is that they feel they need to do. So yeah, if the VIP tickets, which the main thing that those allow for, there's a lot of perks, but the main thing is you can get on and off the floor a little bit earlier and than everybody else. If that does work with your budget, I would highly recommend grabbing one of those before they sell out, because they will sell out and they're very close to selling out right now.
Hey, Jake.
Yeah.
One more thing. I haven't heard anybody suggest this, but I think people ought to bring their own personal plush carpet square and just plan it down standing, because not all the areas are carpeted. It's a whipping to stand on the concrete. And so not that you're going to bring your carpet square and move it, one step at a time ahead of you, but once you light and land, it'd be nice to be standing on a little more plush.
Well, you could, when you first said that, the first thing I thought about is like when I went to National in Chicago, that was my first one. And I sat down, crisscross applesauce with somebody on the floor doing some trades, and sitting on the concrete sometimes might be a little bit refreshing, the cold concrete, but having that little square might be nice. Almost do like a little picnic, get a coffee and do some trades on there. I love that. One of the other things that I was just thinking of, bring snacks, bring water, lots of water, refill your water. I know at least for myself, like it's really easy to get, dehydrated and you're sitting there, you're talking a lot. Water is very, very valuable, I think, when you're walking around all day on concrete.
Hey, Jake, I just want to give a counter argument to that. If you drink too much water, you have to go to the bathroom. Then you lose your place.
and the bathrooms sometimes aren't the nicest.
Don't drink too full and don't drink too much.
Yeah, it's an equilibrium, right?
Yeah, that reminds me of also Chicago specific. You do have to plan your food wisely for these days, because just in general, it can be so fun to go out to eat. And Chicago is such a great food town. But I'll use an exact example from one of my last Chicago trips when I was with Go GTS, and they had Portillo's brought in, which is one of my favorites. And if you don't know Chicago, like everybody thinks Chicago deep dish. Yeah, Chicago deep dish, but also the Italian beef sandwich. That's Chicago's hidden treasure that tourists don't always know about, but you have to get while you're there. So they brought it in one day for lunch. So I ate it. It was great. A little bit heavy. Then that night, a couple of people were like, hey, we're going out, come with us. Where are you going? We're going to Portillo's. Now I've just had it 2 days, two meals in a row. Next thing you know, the next day, like 2:00 runs around. I haven't eaten anything. I'm like, hey, what do we have for lunch? And they're like, oh, there's still a few Italian beef sandwiches from today's lunch that are there. I'm like, I love Italian beef, but now it's my third meal in a row eating it. Then that night, the people that I had plans to go out with, guess where they want to go? And guess where has no salads or anything like that on the menu? So 4 meals in a row having an Italian beef sandwich can make Saturday or Sunday a bit of a slow day for you at the National. So as much as we talk about, deodorant and comfortable shoes and all those things, and I'm not in the greatest health of my life. If we see each other at the National, you'll see I'm kind of shaped like Grimace. Like I look good from this angle, but I just kind of go. So I'm not a scion of health, but do just try to think, how can I get a little bit of fiber, a little bit of green, those types of things? Because that'll give you, if you're there for 3 or 4 days or the whole 5 days, you're going to want some stamina still at the end, especially because as we start talking about cards here soon, I'm sure everybody knows Sunday is the best day to buy at the National. So that's when you really want to be in your peak condition.
But Ivan, Chicago is a beef town. There's steaks all the way up and down the line across the street from the show.
Well, that's what I'm saying. You gotta plan it out. So whether that's, hitting up the grocery store, on Tuesday night and getting stuff that you can eat for lunch so you can go eat the beef that night, like just create a bit of a plan, create a game plan, don't just be reliant on, the hot dogs at the vendor stand at the, on the show floor. And then you go out for steak that night if you're trying to make it all 5 days.
And I love hearing about the Italian beef sandwich because I didn't know about that. So now I'm going to have to try to fit one of those in. So
yeah, puts a Philly cheesesteak to shame.
Okay.
Comment below if you agree. Don't roast me if you disagree. I can handle it. Roast me if you disagree. Bring it on.
And so I usually have like some granola bars and stuff in my bag. I usually have like some, Tic Tacs, simple stuff like that. Because I'm famous for if it's a busy day at the National and I'm, finding some stuff or digging into some dollar bins, I'll skip lunch and, make sure I have plenty of room for that, the big deep dish pizza or something. But I think one of the things, Justin, I don't know if it was last year or the year before that you said, it's not going to kill you to have a salad, right?
No, it most certainly is not. It's just unfortunately you have to seek them out a little bit more in Chicago than you do in other spots. They're not finding you, that's for sure.
Yeah, the last time there, I think Gibson's does have like a couple of salads on their menu. I if I remember correctly.
They have a steak salad that has a little bit of lettuce in it.
There you go.
I will say with the way attendance has gotten though, and then maybe we can move on from food. I mean, I know you guys want to, but the way attendance has gotten, it's actually, unless you have plans already, it's hard to get into Gibson's, right? Like I kind of just avoid it at this point myself because like you're going to be, if you don't have the plans, you're going to be waiting a long time. So if you're listening to this now and you want to go to Gibson's, the famous steakhouse that everybody loves, and it is fantastic, call them now and make your reservation. Get that set in stone because it's going to be a madhouse with what attendance will likely be this year.
Well said, Ivan, but, basically there's a 50% more booth space than there was 2 years ago. And a lot of the people who go to Gibson's and those steakhouses are the dealers. So there's potentially going to be 50% more dealers or the dealer entourage going to those things. So I think it's going to be crazy to try to get reservations at the Gibson's and those kind of high-end steakhouses, which are well-deserved in their reputation. But they only have so many tables.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I, in my experience, like going there for lunch seemed to be easier going up to the bar because I think a lot of people don't want to leave the show floor.
Heretic.
I know. Leaving the show for me personally, it was nice a couple of days to take a breather and step outside. And I think I don't remember where I heard it. It might have been one of you guys on one of the shows. Taking a step away from the National, sometimes it gets overwhelming, right? Like you walk in, and I can only imagine, it's been that way the 2 years I've gone. And I don't know, Dr. Beckett, do you feel every year it's like overwhelming?
Jake, I'm shocked. I mean, basically every so often I take a deep breath and then I dive back in. It's like scuba diving. We're here to the cards. It's very rare that
Yeah, it's a lot. So Justin, one of the things that you started talking about is time management. And I want to hit on that because one of the things that I've been thinking through in my mind is like managing time between like checking out showcases and finding, those PC grails. And then like another thing that I love doing is digging in dollar boxes. But there's also, those are just two of the multitude of things. So let's start talking about time management, how we can schedule our time and use our time so we get the most out of it.
Yeah. Oh boy. Okay. So I guess the starting point is just the show has defined hours. So basically you've got Thursday through Sunday. That's basically 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. So Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I'll try and put the CPA to good use. That'd be about 32 hours. You can add an extra couple hours if you're VIP for your 30-minute windows. And then you add the 4 hours on Wednesday for the sneak peek. So roughly you're looking at about 40 hours of total show time, total time on the floor, if you are an attendee for the entire week. That's the entire show. So that's kind of the starting point. And then if you're only there for the weekend or Friday, Saturday, Thursday, Friday, whatever, you start to cut that back. So maybe you go from 40 to you're already at 20 because you're only going to be there half the time. So you have, call it 20 hours to do whatever it is that you need to do. Nothing moves quickly at the National, as much as I hate to say it. There's all kinds of different things that you can do, whether it's grading, whether it's diving for through dollar boxes, whether it's looking at showcases, whether it is trying to catch up on wrapper redemptions or get something for your redemptions that are 52 years old at this point from Panini. all of this stuff takes time. So if you have a punch list of 10 different things that you want to get done and you're only there, call it 10 hours, a day and a half, basically, that's an hour per item. And that doesn't really leave you that much time, honestly. So I would, before you go, and this is something I do too, just try and prioritize like what you're trying to accomplish. Are you trying to get cards graded while you're there through, whether it's with Beckett, with raw card review, with PSA, get things slabbed, if that's something you want to do, that process can take time. It's certainly much more automated than it used to be. I mean, not that long ago, but still, again, there will be lines because you are unfortunately not the only person that wants to do those things. So just recognize that. If you're going through your dollar boxes, the best dealers with the best boxes, they draw a crowd. So you might have to wait, and the guy next to you might not be moving at the pace that you want him to move at when you're done with your box. So you just have to understand that everything takes time. So just spend some time before the show prioritizing what it is that you'd like to accomplish, and understand how much time you have for the week. So you're not basically 75% of your way through your own show experience, and you're like, I still haven't done so many things, and you're starting to scramble around. And then to Dr. Beckett's point, so I did some work this morning. I went through, and this is just the dealer list. I guess the website, the national website, NSCC23.com, has all kinds of really, really great information. So I went through this morning, just putting some rough math together of, how many dealers are there. And this is just from a dealer perspective. This isn't Case Break Pavilion. This isn't corporates, none of that. It's just what's on the published dealer list. So there's 350 unique dealers. There's approximately 650 booths. Every booth is a 10 by 15. So it's roughly 2 8-foot tables and a 6-foot table per booth. If you do the math, that comes out to roughly 2,000 tables just for posted dealers on the website. Again, excluding Case Break, excluding corporates, excluding the grading and breakers and all that stuff. So 2,000 tables alone is 4 times as big as the Dallas show. And the Dallas show is the biggest show that a lot of people have been to before. So that's just start to understand the scope of what this is. And I'm right there with all you guys. It never fails without every Tuesday morning. When I go in for early dealer setup, I walk in the door and I'm just like, holy crap. It's like this is so big. It's just so big. And as Dr. B mentioned, it's 50% bigger this year because there's 50% more corporate space. it's so big now that there's two main entrances. You go in the main hallway, and you can either go to the left, which is the traditional entrance, or you can go to the right, where if you've been to the Chicago spectacular shows, the right entrance is where they typically have some of those Chicago spectaculars. So there's just so much more stuff. There's so much more to see, and there's so much more just square footage to cover. The walks are going to be longer for all of us, regardless of whether or not you've been to a Chicago National before. So everything, my main thing is that everything takes time. Patience is important. And as an only child who sometimes runs thin on patience, that can be difficult for some more than others. But you just need to understand that and be ready for it, and have a feel of what it is that you really want to get done while you are at the show. And if you'd like to familiarize yourself with the show floor before going, the website NSCC23.com has a PDF of the floor plan. And as you'll see, it's basically like a huge horseshoe now that covers almost the entire first floor of convention center space at the Donald Stevens Convention Center, which I cannot stress enough is gigantic.
Yeah. And so one of the nice things too, and this kind of touches on what Dr. Beckett was saying at the beginning, the corporate space does have carpeting. So if your feet need a little bit of a break, and we learned from Sue's last year that the Tops booth has a little bit of extra padding, so if you want to feel like you're walking on clouds. And if I remember correctly, there's a red carpet area towards like one of the ends of the National. I don't know if that carpet gives you much bounce, but those are some areas that it's a nice thing about the corporate area, at least.
The red carpet area we were set up back there a couple years ago, and it's tucked back, but that was also the year when the air conditioner didn't work in late July in Chicago for about a day and a half. So thankfully we were doing okay, but some of the guys like RBI Crew and MC Sports Cards, some of those guys over by those big bay doors were basically in a convection oven for about 8 to 12 hours of show time, which was not good.
Yeah, I remember that. And actually there was a dollar there's a dealer I remember with a bunch of dollar bins that I was starting my mornings off going through there, and they would have those doors open. And I learned quickly, like, go there while the doors are open. You can get some breeze, and then move over towards the red carpet district, as I called it, when the day starts getting warmer. So hopefully the AC is working in the whole area this year.
So the question is, would you rather lose the AC or lose the Wi-Fi?
I will sweat all day long. Give me my Wi-Fi. Well, I'll bring backup shirts. I don't care. Yeah, keep me plugged in.
I was on a flight from Dallas yesterday that was delayed 4.5 hours because the air conditioning on the plane wasn't working. So I would lean towards keeping my air conditioning at this point, but it might just be a recency bias.
Yeah, I mean, so I'm glad you mentioned that though, Dr. Beckett, because last year in Atlantic City, the Wi-Fi was like non-existent, even for dealers, from what I heard, that paid for Wi-Fi. And one of the things that I think it highlighted, for me at least, is the importance of kind of like knowing what you're willing to pay for cards, or knowing the comps and knowing the values and such. Because I was hearing a lot of people that, they weren't sure, they wanted to go check comps, and then they went back. As we know at the National, things move quickly. So if you leave the show floor for an hour to go and, try to get your phone to work, and you pull up a comp and you go back, that card could be gone. And if there's not many of that card in existence, like one of my favorite cards that I was able to get was the 97 Triumvirate Illuminator of Penny, that there's, speculated to be less than 100 of them in existence. I didn't see another one at the show. So that was one that I knew what I was comfortable paying for it, and luckily the dealer was willing to work with me on it. No idea what it would sell for publicly, but knowing what you're comfortable paying for a card if the Wi-Fi is not working, I think is one of the little tidbits that I can at least add to the conversation from my experience. If the Wi-Fi is not working, and there's a lot of people, even if the Wi-Fi is working, there's a lot of people trying to use it. It's going to be slow.
I'd actually love to hear from, if I can ask a question on the Jake and Justin show, Dr. Beckett, Jim, in the show setting, and you're the originator of the price guide. You know, you're the first person that went and started putting this together for collectors to start having references. In the show setting, what do you think is the proper etiquette for negotiating a price or basing a price? Like what do you see in 2023 with as many shows as you still go to? How do you handle that negotiation?
Well, there's only one rule of price negotiation in my mind, is don't be a jerk. And that's basically applies to the buyer and the potential seller. You know, the seller has the right to put whatever price, regardless of whether it's high, low, or indifferent, on his or her card. And the potential buyer can make an offer, and that offer can be refused or accepted or countered or not. And it just ought to be civil and reasonably courteous, because not every deal is going to get made, and they shouldn't get upset about it. It's you know, the buyer should offer as much as he or she is willing to offer to try to get that card, but the seller has no. The seller can do what he or she wants to. And so but again, there needs to be more self-restraint, that sometimes you just got to say there's not a deal here if one side is being inflexible, but don't be a jerk.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, as a dealer, I've certainly seen my fair share of both sides of the table, oftentimes and opposites of one another, just things start to get heated and pop off. And, you know, we live in a brave new world of everybody thinks they know everything because everything seems to be selling. But again, if somebody can't sell something for whatever the case might be, and somebody can't buy something for whatever the case might be, that's part of it. The great thing about the National is that there's tens of thousands of other potential people who might want to either purchase that card or sell that card. So it's pricing. You can't take it personally, and that degree of civility, as Dr. Beckett mentioned, will certainly go a long way, because you never know down the road what that person might get that you really, really want, and then you come back to them and be like, oh, I remember you were the moron from the National who just tried to browbeat me over the head with, you know, card ladder comps, and we just couldn't get anywhere. So just these things are fleeting. If it doesn't work, it's not a big deal.
Yeah, I think there's a saying that I learned in Hollywood, in Los Angeles. I spent 15 years living there, and I worked in film for a long time. And there's a popular saying, which is, LA is a big town, or LA is a big city, but Hollywood is a small town. And I think the same is very true of the hobby. You know, the internet and the internet hobby and all this, it's huge. Yeah, there's going to be tens of thousands, if not 100,000 plus people at this National, but it's still a small town. You know, people have memories, people remember. And, you know, Jake, you mentioned this is your third year. Justin, you've been going for a decade. I'm almost a decade. And now Dr. Beckett's at 3+ decades, we'll say politely, right? People, you could be in this a lot longer than you realize. And you could need that person as an ally 5 years from now. You know, so don't be a jerk. I love that advice.
And I think, kind of to go off that a little bit too, if you're not a jerk, you know, that's how you actually build relationships. You know, that's kind of for better or for worse, that's what a lot of the internet side of the hobby has turned into. It's, you see something you want, you type PRICE ? And you might get a number back, you might not get a number back, or whatever it is that the case might be. And it's purely transactional. But if you go and just start a quick conversation with a dealer, or talk about some stuff that they have in the case, or, you know, just don't be afraid to strike up a conversation and just begin to form relationships, is regardless of how big or small they might be, because that's not, people also certainly remember the negative probably more vividly than the positive, but people do remember the positive as well. And you can come back to that at subsequent shows, like Ivan said, and just, oh yeah, we talked about you're an MJ guy, or you're a UNC guy, or you just moved to LA or something like that. So that, again, that's another kind of opportunity that I think a lot of people take for granted, because they'll have their hit list of a couple dozen cards, and you'll run through the show floor in the first 60 minutes and not see what you're looking for from a card perspective, and be like, well, what the hell do I do now? I'm here for 3 more days. So
that's also incredibly useful for, some people may think we're just being nice and community minded, and we're the community minded people, but let's go bottom line. Let's say you are the flipper. Let's say you are the person that this is your business. Well, you're still going to get further taking those mental notes, or maybe even making them physical notes or digital notes, because you're going to spot a deal at another table, and you're going to say, oh, I remember that dealer. He loves the Mariners. And you're going to find that Mariners card that dealer doesn't have time to circumvent the floor and find. Or it's going to be somebody that you now have an online relationship with from scanning their QR code, and you're going to find the thing, and you're going to be able to flip that thing because you're going to find the deal. So this advice actually applies whether you're just this nice community-minded guy who's trying to do well, that we all like to think of ourselves as, but also even if you're the bottom line sales flipper, treating people with respect and paying attention to them is going to help you out if you spot that item. I could go all day long, like there's things that sell better here, and I'm sure, Jake, there's things that sell better where you're at, that you're going to be looking on deals at the National that you can take home because it's regional. So, being nice and respectful and learning other people's interests can really go a long way on the business side as much as on the community side.
Yeah, I think those definitely resonate with me, because one of the things that I learned is, just saying, hey, how you doing? How's your show going to dealers goes a long way, because I've seen some, just walking up to booths, I've seen some very rude people that they aren't meaning to be rude, but they're just like very curt, and yeah, exactly. Hey, you got any Luca 10s? And the dealer just kind of laughs and is like, no, look at my booth, I've got all baseball. Like, what are you talking about? And they just walk away, and not that the person's being mean, but there's no chance for conversation or relationship. And there's a dealer that I made a number of deals with in the Chicago National, and then the same thing in Atlantic City, that I now know, they like Kobe, and I have some Kobe cards that I'm planning to bring with me, and they might not want my Kobe's, but they might, and I think I wouldn't have been able to learn that if I didn't just stop and say, hey, and have those conversations. I think, there's so many good nuggets that you guys just shared. Like, one of the things about taking down notes, one of the things that I did last year, I always bring around a notebook, but sometimes, I don't want to put my backpack down and take my notebook out, but I text myself if there's a card that I see at a booth, and I'm not sure if I want to get it, I don't have the funds yet, I need to move some other card, whatever the case may be, I'll text myself, or I'll take a picture of the card, this booth number, this is the card, this is the price, whatever information I need to refresh my memory. Because I think one of the things Justin taught me the first year is it's a massive place. You're going to forget. You're going to say, oh yeah, I know exactly where that is. You're not going to remember. And then you're, running around and like, oh yeah, the guy had, stickers, everybody's got stickers, so it's just ask them, hey, what's your booth number? They're going to probably know. And then you can go back, and that card might not even be there, but at least you know where you're going. You go there, hey, that card's gone, and you can move on to the, the next hunt.
And to the point as well that we talked about, like, if, the internet's definitely going to get spotty throughout the course of the week. Hopefully we'll make it past, Thursday evening before that happens, but who knows? It's obviously, if you can't look something up that you want to buy, that's one thing. But if you bring cards that you want to potentially sell or trade to a dealer at a trade night, somebody you meet on the show floor, whatever, you can kind of give yourself an assist, so to speak. Just do your pricing research in advance, and whether you put sticker prices on all your cards or sticker values on all your cards like the dealers do. If you go through and make an inventory list and then print it off so you've just got it in your back pocket, you won't be hamstrung when it comes time to talk to a potential trade party or a potential buyer, when the buyer or the dealer is asking, what the last one of these sell for, or what do you want to get out of it? You're not trying to go through on the internet, a dead internet, to figure out what it is that you value your own cards at. And that can be very helpful in getting something done, because I can't tell you how many times as a dealer, as I've been on that side of the table, where cards come up and, you make a stack of a few cards or whatever, and it's like, well, what are you looking to get out of these? And the person just says, I don't know. It's like, oh, well, we all need a starting point somewhere. That goes a long way to show that, if it's a price you can't pay, then, you don't have to waste each other's time, so to speak, or if it's something that you think you can work with, you can go from there. So just, again, knowing that the internet will probably be spotty, you're kind of SOL from a buyer perspective if you're trying to do the research on the fly on something you like. But for your own stuff, for your own inventory, take the time ahead of the show to go through and make some sort of kind of inventory list with your own values that you can reference when you are working with other folks who you might want to make a deal with.
Yeah, and to add on to that, one of the tips that I think Ryan, Card Collector 2, shared this the first year, is putting stickers on your cards. So like the cards that I'm bringing, like I'll have a sticker on the back of it with the price. And two things that I learned from that is, not only, like you were saying, Justin, it gives us a starting point. And even if like I sit there and say, hey, this is $100 and the dealer is going to offer me 50, at least we know where we're starting. And it's not like I'm at 500 in my head. But also, one of the things that I noticed is if I have the sticker on the back, sometimes I'll notice a dealer going through my box. And if they flip the card over on the back to see the price, I'll know that they're at least somewhat interested. And if they put it back, that also gives me some information that maybe my price is off, right? So that, that evening in the hotel room, I can take a look and see like, hey, what is that? Did I get it wrong or something like that? So I've seen that work very well. It just speeds things up too. Like we're talking about with time management. It can be a long, arduous process if you're sitting there comping every single one of the dealer's cards out. Just think if they're trying to do the same thing for your cards.
Yeah, and to that point as well, I've mentioned this before, but it's always one of those things as well that a lot of us bring cards that we would consider personal collection, or we're all more attached to certain things than we are others. If there are cards that are no go, you're never going to sell them or move them or trade them, you can certainly bring those cards to show off to friends or talk about or whatever. But if you're starting to work with a dealer or maybe someone else that you might want to try and grab something from, and you have a box of stuff, or you have cards that are personal collection mixed in with cards that are available, it is kind of annoying when you go through a box and you get a dozen straight cards that are not available, so on and so forth. So there's nothing wrong with bringing that stuff. It's actually a lot of fun. That's what I enjoy. Or one of the things I enjoy about the show is seeing things that I've only seen, JPEGs of before. But at the same time, if you bring something and you show that card to somebody at some point during the show, somebody's going to want to try and get it from you. It's without fail. And they also might give you and make you a potential Godfather offer where you're hit with a number that's so big or so beyond what you might think that it would be worth that you'll really have to think about it a little bit. And if it's gone, it might be gone for quite a while. So just understand that if you bring cards and you show cards to people, somebody's going to want it at some point. And if it's truly personal collection, maybe just keep it in another box or a different pocket of your book bag or stuff like that. So you're not tempted to, tempted or accidentally take it out working with a dealer. And then, like you talked about, Jake, they go through the entire stack, and it just kind of shows that you're not wasting their time, to put it bluntly.
Yeah.
I was going to add to that too. Like, listening to this and putting myself in a viewer standpoint, I don't want to give viewers extra homework. The National should be something to really enjoy.
I do. I'll do that. You can be the good cop. I'll be the bad cop.
But also with that, as somebody who my day job is, I help run a marketplace site where people are buying and selling and listing items, and I see some of the prices people list at. It is really important. It's gonna be better for your well-being to set clear expectations on what your cards are actually worth. If you're planning to go and sell cards, please do get a clear idea of what they're worth before you go on the show floor. You're going to be wasting your own time and frustrated if you bring a lot of cards that you think are worth $100 a card, but people can buy them elsewhere for $10. And that may sound ridiculous to some people listening, but I see it daily. I'm sure Justin at the shows you go to see daily. So, the market does change a lot. So if you've got a lot of stuff you bought last year, it may have a completely different price this year. If you bought a player who was doing really well last year, and now you're like, oh, I need to move some of that so I have some money to buy the stuff I want this year, do yourself a favor, and yes, do check out those prices and see what others are getting for those cards or asking for those cards. Again, I don't want to give you too much homework, but at least do that, because otherwise you're going to be there and you're going to have a really frustrating 6 hours, and it's just going to be frustrating. Whereas if you go in with clear expectations, hopefully it can be really productive for you.
One thing, kind of on the topic of not having homework, one of the areas that I touched on at the beginning that I really love, Dr. Beckett, I know this is something that, you people will probably find you at the dollar bins, which is an area that I love. But I find, like, I can get, like you mentioned, bringing a chair would be nice, but like it can be exhausting. So like, what are some tips if you're trying to go through a lot of dollar bins that you found are successful for you?
Well, you don't have to bring a chair. You can bring a cushion. Basically, it depends on what you're interested in. And if you're interested in big dollar cards, you're going to be walking around a lot. If you're interested in a dollar box, you're going to be sitting around a lot. And so you ought to be comfortable. You ought to enjoy the time. And so if I'm in a dollar box, there has to be enough cards I'm pulling to make it interesting to me. Just like if you're walking around looking for big cards, you don't want to spend actually some people wouldn't mind spending all day looking and buying one card that day. That's not the way I like to hobby. But if you found your grail card, that'd be a successful day. But for me, I'm every hour I want to have some benefit, and that might be talking to people. It might be buying cards, any number of things. It could be walking around and surveying and just getting the lay of the land. But I'm trying to be what Justin was saying. That you got 40 hours to work with, and so I want to make them productive in terms of relationships, in terms of cards.
And from your experience, if people are thinking, yeah, I might want to go through dollar bins, but like, what am I really looking at? Like, what kind of, when we say dollar bins, people think $1. Like, in your experience, are there dollar bins that are, you're going to see graded cards? Are there dollar bins that are actually like $10 or a quarter? And also the other thing I think people might be asking, like, in your experience, have you ever found like, amazing steals in dollar bins at the National that is just like, this is not a dollar card?
Well, Rich Klein has found amazing steals that are so amazing that he's gone back to the dealer and said, surely you didn't want to put this in the dollar box. And he's actually he's bargained against himself to make sure the dealer, because the dealer made a mistake. But then Rich had the knowledge. Me, I rarely find anything that's more than a $10 card. On the other hand, the first assessment when you're going through a dollar box or a $10 box or any box that has a nominal price on it is that if I'm going through a dollar box, for example, and if most of the cards I think are worth less than $1, that's not very impressive. If most of the cards are worth $1 or more, that's the way the successful bargain box people do it. If you put bad stuff in there, it's a turnoff. And so if it's $1 and up, and they admittedly put in a few much better cards, and much better might be a $10 card that clearly is easily worth $1. And so, but Jake, you have to know that. You have to know it when you see it. And it's not necessarily somebody that's your player or somebody that's on your want list or even sets that you're that familiar with. I'm familiar enough with the long tail that I can have a lot of fun seeing cards I haven't seen. And $1, I have little risk to just, make a pile of cards that I want to take home and have fun with.
And I would say too that a lot of dealers who will have a significant, quote unquote dollar box presence for customers to look through, they've already priced this stuff out. They're almost done pricing these dollar boxes, because from a volume or a percentage of work perspective, it's much more in depth to go through and price out a 4-row or make sure that you have a 4-row of quote unquote dollar inventory than it is to price out, slabs that go in a display case. So, look for trends. Who are players that have popped in the past 2 or 3 months? What are sets that have been popular that have come out in the past 2 or 3 months that have seen a nice little bump in value that, again, if they were getting ahead of the curve, which a good dealer should have been doing by now, there might be opportunity to find some good stuff in those. So again, there's definitely ways to do it. You don't have to know everything about everything, but as long as you kind of have some general guideposts and understanding of broad hobby trends over the past couple months, these dealers, those boxes are filed away and checked off the to-do list, and they're ready to go. So don't use that information to your advantage.
Jake, if you like the dollar boxes, basically, the dealer that buys a large collection is separating the cards into good, better, and best. Good might be $1, better might be a $5 box, best is going in the showcase. And notice I didn't say bad or not so good. The not so good cards are just bulked out. So the good cards, they're pretty good cards. They're not great cards, but they're pretty good cards. They're going to go in the dollar box or something like that, and people are going to have a lot of fun with it. But they bought a huge collection. They got their money back on the giant cards, and they put in the good, better, and best. They may even have gotten their money back on bulking out the base cards, the common cards, the stuff that really can't even go in even in a quarter box. And they're having fun with it. So they're making money, and they're passing on the savings to guys like us who would enjoy looking at cards, finding an occasional fun card to take home.
Yeah, I would add, I have some anecdotes around that. One is a few years ago, it was literally during the National that some big sports media account tweeted a Shane, not Justin Bieber card that Topps had made, where it was a Shane Bieber card, but on the back it said not Justin. And the card was one of those, we think of it as a common, but just because of public attention, it shot up to $30, $40 overnight. Well, the dealers, they've got that in their common boxes. They're going out the night before. They're not checking Twitter. They're not keeping up with all those trends. So you could find that in the quarter boxes at the National the next day, and then go take it and flip it and pay for your meal. So there is a level of knowledge is power, because the dealers are doing these really big deals. And so they're happy, they don't mind either if you find that card. Same thing with the Mark Jackson Hoops card when that whole thing took off. So having a knowledge of those types of things can be really helpful. A few years ago, I had sort of noticed a trend that Topps Chrome basketball refractors were popular regardless of the player. And I'm going through some quarter bins, and I found a 2007, 2008 Chauncey Billups. Well, it's not a $30 card, but it was probably a $3 card, and it's in a quarter bin. That's the kind of stuff I like and enjoy. So if you can spot trends like that, or have your eye out for trends like that, I think it can really help you on the floor be able to do that. And those opportunities are definitely there. You'll see people complain, prices are at the National or this, or prices are that. Yeah, but again, a lot of those dealers have made enough money on this card that they love having that bin where you can find some deals if you're willing to do that work.
You know, Jake, the problem in the industry, not the problem, but I mean, the situation is the people with the power are the people that have the money in their pocket, you know? And so if they come up to a table and they say, hey, I like this card, here's what I'm offering for it, you know, they need to have the self-restraint to say, you know, whether it's Wi-Fi or not, they might just say, you know, I can't check the comps, but I'd really like to pay this much for that card. If you accept it, that's great. If you don't, there's lots of other dealers I'm going to go look at. Same thing with a $1 box, a $10 box, or anything. You just say, this is my offer. And if you're courteous about it, they can just say, well, no, thank you. But in the world of no Wi-Fi, people would be paying prices based on what they feel good about paying. And there's nothing wrong with that. And most dealers will say no, but you know what? It's like the guys that make the minimum bid across the board in a catalog auction. And you know what? They win some items.
Yeah, that makes sense. So well, I've been really bad looking at the comments. I'm not Jeremy Lee. I saw that there's a comment that it looks like, I think, Ivan, you had responded to about autographs, and I know we brushed on that really quickly. I don't have much experience with autographs. Do any of you all have any thoughts on getting autographs or anything around autographs at the National?
I think Skywalker kind of touched on it in the question, but if this is somebody you've been a fan of since you're a kid, or you have a personal connection kind of with that player, and you would like to meet them and get something personalized or whatever, it's a great opportunity to talk to these folks, even if it's just for a minute or two. The majority of them are very nice, very approachable, very reasonable. I mean, they need to be. They're getting paid to be there, so that would hopefully be the expectation and the reality to go with that expectation. But you know, I'm not terribly well versed in the like the TriStar Autograph Pavilion options. But again, they're certainly slammed. It's slammed all the time, whether you're a baseball, basketball, gaming, wrestling, whatever the case might be. There's people collect everything under the sun, so they're always popular. There's always people there, and I would say if that's something that you're interested in, yeah, definitely go for it. Just understand, again, back to harp on time management. There's gonna there's going to be a difference between the potential autograph line for like a Doink the Clown versus Tom Brady, so to speak. So for example purposes. So just note.
I would add to that, Justin.
Yeah, go ahead.
Even Doink the Clown is going to have a pretty big line.
Is Doink going to be there this year?
No, don't I wish.
So, because all the Justins of the world want to get his auto. So do keep in mind, like, I actually responded in the comments because I saw that pop up. And for me, my priorities at the National are, first off, connect with my friends in the hobby and some people that aren't friends yet, make new friends. And then second is doing that sort of dime box and quarter box diving that I love. So for me, it has to be a real tied-in name that I'm close to, because it's going to be another line. And there's going to be a lot of lines at the National. So I don't have any problem with it, but if you're watching this, you're probably already a bit more community-minded. It's why you're on YouTube. It's why you're following Jake. It's why you're following Justin. So I would say just be selective. Don't be like, don't create an entire list of 20 autograph signers you're going to want to get, because that's going to end up being your 20 hours on the floor between the lines and the acquisition of the items and shuffling in and out. Be selective, make a plan if any of what you want to do is social as well, because you're going to be stuck in that line for a long time.
Jake, can I follow up with Justin and Ivan's comments? I mean,
Please.
Basically, the time management aspect, here's the way I look at it as a math guy. If I just think, and again, I'm just pulling a number out of thin air, but if I thought each hour at the National is worth $100. Would I rather have $100, or would I rather be standing in line for an autograph, or would I rather be working a dollar box, or spending time with a friend? And the answer could be yes on any of these, and it could be no on any of those. It just depends. But generally, I don't see the of those three choices of friends or future friends and looking at cards, autographs comes in third for me. And I think it does for most of the people at the National. But there's a lot of people that come to the National and are getting it. And if they get the VIP package, they're going to be in some serious lines for getting the autographs. And that makes their show. But for me, I want to, if I'm not looking at a dollar box, then I want to be spending time with somebody I want to spend time with, or whether it's a new friend or an old friend. But I want to be like Justin, I think, is saying, to be intentional about your time.
And we haven't even talked about the spectacle aspect and the events aspect of it either, which also takes up a lot of time. If you want the Topps exclusive packs or the Panini exclusive packs, first thing Wednesday when you get in, go to their booths and find out the details around that, because you're going to be standing in line for those things. If there's a special event happening at Panini at 2 p.m. on Friday that you want to be part of, a box break or a case break, that's going to be a time commitment as well. And there's a lot of those things. CGC is going to have fun stuff, not just grading. Upper Deck, I don't know if they're going to be there this year, but every year they've been there, it's been like a parade and like a carnival. Like, they have fun at their booth. So that's another thing to plan for time-wise, is how much time am I going to spend standing in line to get those silver packs? How much, am I going with kids and they're going to want to partake in these 3 Panini kids breaks, or, Upper Deck is doing this thing or Topps is doing this thing. There's so much of that also hasn't even been publicized yet. That'll come out in the following weeks leading up to it. But just keep in mind, that's another suck on time. It's not all just us guys going through the quarter boxes and the dollar boxes. There's social stuff, but there's also hobby event stuff that you're probably going to want to partake in quite a bit of.
Yeah, that's a really good point. It's, we keep referring to this as a card show, but it's a trade show as well. And with trade shows come massive spectacles. So you'll see that within the center of the showroom floor are all the corporate booths, and there'll be 20, 30-foot booths. I mean, I think in Atlantic City last year, they had we were probably about 100, 150 feet away from the Stranger Things interactive booth that Zero Cool was doing. And like every 15 minutes, there was a chime going off with like simulated lightning strikes. And you're going to be overwhelmed with sights and sounds and stuff like that. And you might be like, oh my God, what am I missing now? And, if you run back over to see what's going on, then you could just get stuck in another line. So I think that's really good to be aware of as well before you hop in, is that that you could spend an entire day just in the center of the show looking at at all the different corporates. Like, one of my favorite things to do is all the big auction houses. So whether it's Golden, Heritage, PWCC, Collect, Robert Edwards, Infinite. Sorry, I'm forgetting. I'm trying not to, but I did. I'm sure. But they will have live previews of all of like the cool game worn jerseys and shoes and bats Justin, and gloves.
If I can, they're museums.
Yeah, exactly.
Collectible museums that you get to walk through.
Yep. So all of these things that these companies are previewing in the weeks leading up to the show online, you will be able to see those in person. Mm-hmm. And again, I can't tell you, I mean, I do it all the time too. I'll go out and just to take a lap and stretch the legs. And before you know it, an hour's gone because I've just been looking at all the ridiculous stuff that's on display that the auction houses are going to be running in the coming months. So again, it's very easy to get trapped and sucked into everything that's going on in that corporate section, like Ivan mentioned. And there's never a shortage of things that are going on in there as well. So again, just your head's going to be on a swivel the entire week or day or hours that you're there. So yeah, don't be afraid to yank yourself out by the back of the neck if you get stuck.
Yeah, both years I have felt like there are certain things I find out that happen in the corporate pavilion after the fact, and I'm like, oh man, I missed out. Like every single year, I feel like there's stuff that's going on that's just like there's so much happening that you can't. It's almost like Disney World, right? Like you can't do everything, so you have to really pick and choose. And with that in mind, I'm gonna try, if I have time, if time allows, to get some folks on that will be manning those corporate booths. Maybe a week or two before the national, so we can do something kind of like this with some of those people that will have, more information at that time, and can really share some of those selfishly again. So I don't miss out on free T-shirts are great, stuff like that. So yeah, there's a lot.
And this is all just during the show hours as well. I mean, we haven't even started talking about like trade nights and things like that. Card Collector 2, Ryan and Jimmy with all the roadshow shops, they host the biggest one of the year. I believe it's on Thursday night every year. But I think they had over 10,000 people come through the last one. I don't know, maybe that's way too many, but it doesn't matter. They're gigantic trade shows or trade nights, and that'll be the big one. But then every single night there's people meeting in hotel lobbies, and God love these different hotel chains just putting up with all these idiots like us running roughshod over their properties. But people will just sit down in a lobby and be awake for another 5 to 6 hours trading cards. So there's just so much going on. It's Las Vegas for card nerds like us, and the time will fly by so fast you'll lose all track of time. And yeah, it's just there's just so much stuff to be prepared for.
And one thing you just mentioned, Justin, that sparked a memory for me is the trade nights. Some of them are very impromptu. Like I think the Lowe's Hotel had a lot of activity every night. But like sleep is something we haven't even touched on yet. It's like, for me anyway, with two young kids, like I had a buddy that was staying with me in Chicago, and I was getting in, a couple nights I got in at like 2 a.m. and then I'm waking up at like 6 or 7, to shower and get back out the door. So it's like, if you want to have sleep, you need to plan that in as well.
Yeah. You get lost in the sauce real easy.
Yeah. It's an overwhelming amount of stuff. And there's no way to get it all done. So one of the things, Ivan, you had mentioned that you thought we should do, so I'm going to let you take the reins here, is a best and worst. What are you thinking?
Yeah, I just thought it might be fun. Like I've got one story that sucks and one story that I think is really cool. Like when I think back over my 10 years, but I'm also a little selfish. Again, Dr. Beckett, you've got such experience. When I say best and worst anecdote from your years at the National, I want to know what comes to mind for you. Like what just pops out as your best memory of a National ever? And is there anything that is also like, sometimes our worst hobby stories end up having some affection grow into them. It's like, oh, that was the worst, but we really love it. So what jumps to mind for you, Dr. Beckett, when I say best and worst moments you've ever had at a National?
Well, thanks, Ivan, but I can't even think of a worst. I mean, I've been to every one of them. Some have been better than others. It was an absolute thrill at the first one to see not how big it was, but that it happened and that it was well attended, and we had created something that was beginning and was enduring. And then surely it was a huge highlight at the Anaheim National, which I probably is the record of in I think 91, that was just so huge. And I think the next one, Ivan, is going to be this late July. I think this will be the biggest National ever. And I think it's going to be biggest in terms of square footage, in terms of the number of dealers, of booths, of tables. And I think it could easily be the largest in terms of people coming in and dollar turnover. I mean, I think it's going to be outrageously good. I really hope it is for the Brogies and the Burkuses and the people that have spent so much time promoting this thing. Before the new regime comes in, I think they're going to go out with a big success.
Ivan, what do you got?
Well, I do have a worst. Although I love that there's so much positivity, but really the worst is just a little bit of a keep an eye out. Like it's a warning. My very first national, 2014 in Cleveland, my very first day, I actually picked up a box of Goodwin Champions at the Upper Deck booth. It was the very first thing I did. Well, then they were doing some promotional stuff, and I set the box down right next to me on a table, but next to me, and behind me. And I kid you not, I wasn't looking for 2 minutes, and when I looked back, I saw someone trundling off, and the box was gone. And I was not trying to create a scene or anything. It's a $70 box back then, and so I just let it go. But just keep in mind, even right here, keep it in front of you. Very, very important. Keep it in front of you if it's yours and you want to keep it. Flip side of that, my best is I was so blessed to, for 5 or 6 years with Go GTS Live, be able to co-host the main stage in the Breaker Pavilion, which was really, it's not like a showcase. Maybe it is this year with how much it's grown. But it was the place for people that were tired to sit down. It wasn't like, oh, hey, we're big, we're important. It's like, we're here to entertain your wives and the kids when they're tired. But I always saw my job there as getting people to open up and share some things. And, a lot of people come to the national and they don't know anybody. And a few years back, I want to say it was 2019, there was this older gentleman that was there. And during one of our breaks in programming, I said, who's got something cool that they want to show? And he walked up with this box, and he opened it up, and he started pulling out 1952 Topps cards. And he said, this is my first time ever coming to a card show. I came here from Canada because, I think it's time. I got to move. I'm going to grade these cards and move them and go get my hockey grail. And just pulled out just beautiful early 50s Topps cards, rookies, really sick stuff. And didn't know, he even said, I don't know anybody at the show. So, thanks for asking so I can show this to you. And he went and got them graded and flipped all of that into a PSA 7 or I think maybe an 8 Gretzky that was his grail card.
Wow.
And he's like 60 or 70 and he'd never been to a card show. And he made the national his destination for grading his childhood Topps baseball and getting his grail card. That was just awesome.
Wow. That is so cool. Justin, what do you got any thoughts for best and worst?
So I think kind of along those lines, but I think, we've just seen, there's just been such sea change in the hobby the past 24 to 36 months. I think one of the things that I'll just call it my best, but it was last year. And I mean, this is still kind of sappy, but whatever, who cares? A guy, my favorite thing about the hobby in general, but especially at the Nationals, you just don't know what you're going to see ever. So I had a father-son come up to my booth, and of course we were back in the cheap seats. I think I'm a priority 4, so we were sandwiched between the Fitterman Sports wrestling pictures, and a booth right next to us was just covered in antiques that I would call trash. But anyway, one man's trash, yada yada yada. But anyway, this father-son actually somehow made it back to our booth, and the dad, we were talking a little bit, really nice, and the dad was like, yeah, we brought something. We have an appointment to get it graded at BGS, and we talked a little bit about, which grading company do you think is better and all that stuff. And he pulled out the card, and it was a 98-99 Michael Jordan game jersey auto, hand numbered to 23. So not the 7-figure one, but the 6-figure one. And it was in one of those little Loctite boxes that, he's had it in there for 20 years. He was like, I opened boxes of cards back in the day. I was hoping to pull Dirk rookies. And I pulled this Michael Jordan instead, and I kind of forgot that I had it, but he went online and saw all these articles about sports cards being worth a lot of money, and he was like, so I brought it to get it graded, and I was like, well, good grief, man, what are you going to do with this? He's like, we're going to put it towards paying off a house, and he graded it. It came back, I think it was a BGS 910, and he sold it for just over 6 figures and paid off his house. That's pretty cool. I certainly wasn't expecting that. The worst, I mean, it would be my personal worst, and again, it's just cardboard, so it can't be that bad. But there's a card I scoped out like 5 years ago. It was my number one target, and I'd been like circling these guys' booth pretty much for all of Tuesday and all of Wednesday morning, and I took like a 5-minute break to go meet up with a buddy of mine to catch him at the door, walk him over, and help, just someone else to walk the show floor with. So I was like, well, go back to this booth where I know these guys are going to be setting up, and they were setting up. And I saw another dealer who was one of the biggest dealers in the world there, and I was like, excuse me, I was like, oh shit. And he had that card that I wanted in a stack of like 10 other cards. He was making some huge deal, and he looks at me and he goes, the card that I wanted, he was like, hey, do you think this is worth the asking price? And I was like, if you don't buy it, I will. And he was like, okay, it still seems high. I was like, so that I basically spiraled for an entire day trying to make up for that one. But that one was tough. But again, there's other wins through the course of the years too. So that's all part of it. It's the thrill of the chase.
Yeah. Wow. Those are all incredible. I'm trying to think of if I have any in my 2 years. I think I want to start with the worst. I think the worst is actually a buddy's story. So last year at the National, I don't remember which day. It was probably Friday. I think that was his first day in there. Maybe it was Thursday, and he found a card that he's been looking for, a female wrestler that he collects in the Prism set that had just come out. And this card was sitting in a booth, and he said the price was way too low, and he needed to move some cards to get the funds for purchasing that card. So by the end of the day, he had moved the cards he needed to. So he's like, all right, next morning I'm gonna get in there. And he goes there, and the card's gone. And the woman that was behind the booth, she goes, you should have told me. I would have put it aside for you. If you're here every day, I would have put it aside if you had told me that you were interested in that card. And he was, of course, in hindsight, it's like, yeah, I should just ask. But, the lesson there is, if there's a card that you really like, you form a relationship with a dealer, and you're like, hey, I'm going to get the funds for this, it doesn't hurt to ask. And then the best, I can't really say any one best, but it's just like, it's meeting people, it's strengthening friendships, creating bonds. I think every year when I come back, my wife asks me for pictures, like with people that I met or like stuff that I did, and I'm really bad at doing that. And I'm telling her all these stories and all these people and all these things, and she's like, take pictures with them so I can see who you're talking about and put a face to a name. And but forming those relationships, those bonds, I think is the best for me. I can't really pick just anyone. Sorry, kind of cheap.
Hey Jake, we did a picture 2 years ago. You never sent me a copy.
You know what? You're right. And you were the one person I was like, if I don't take a picture with Dr. Beckett, nobody's gonna believe I actually met him. So
okay,
I'll have to send you a copy of that.
Okay.
Thank you for the reminder. So what other topics do we need to touch on? I mean, there's so much more that we could hit, and I'm sure I'm forgetting something that's really important.
So I mean, just on Ivan's kind of worst story, that theft is unfortunately a part of this show. There's a lot of people, which means there's a lot of hands. And I guess just if you're ever starting to feel like you're getting out of your comfort zone, whether it's you're trying to work with a dealer or somebody, and you've got a couple stacks of cards out on a booth, and they have stack cards on a booth, and people are starting to move in or whatever, just don't be afraid to like pull back and put some stuff, maybe take some cards off the table, or just do whatever you need to do to be comfortable. There's a lot of people relatively speaking, or a lot, as in more than 4 years ago when it was zero. But, guys will wear like small mounted little GoPro cameras. You can certainly do that if you feel that you need to go to that degree. But again, it goes back to just being comfortable. Like you are responsible for whatever you bring to the show. No one else is. It's if you're set up at a booth, it's nice to have guys that look out for your stuff, or if you're walking around, somebody can help. But ultimately, if something goes missing, it's on you. So just be sure that you're aware of that. You're mindful kind of your surroundings, and if things just start to get a little uncomfortable for you, then just pull the ripcord and reset, and just hop back in whenever you need to, because it will get overwhelming at some point. It gets overwhelming for me, and I'm almost 7 feet tall. So, yeah, it's not a big deal. It's part of it.
Yeah, I'd add, I really love this more than a backpack. I actually love the like sideways duffel, or like the when there's a duffel that's a bit more square shaped at the bottom. I know Panini's given them out in past years. Sometimes your grocery bag will look like that, but I really like that more so than, I get the Zion cases, and if you have cards that are worthy of the Zion cases, keep them. But just for an entire day at a show, I love a nice bag that I can hold here, but still keep sort of safe there, but much easier to access than a backpack that you're taking off, putting back on, zipping. So if you're just sort of like your average collector, you got sort of your average box that you're carrying, or box or two, and you don't want to put stuff in. I'm a big fan of the sort of squarish, carry bags. That makes sense. I wish I knew what they were called. I'm not that fashionable.
And if you have a Zion case or a bag that you want to put on the dealer's showcase, just a quick etiquette item is just ask. I've 100% see people plop 25-pound bags of cards on a glass display case, and the glass just cracks or shatters. So just be mindful of that, and it's also respectful of the dealer's showcase space as well, because you're not going to be the only. There's a good chance you're not going to be the only person at that booth looking at those cards. So if you have a Pelican case that's the size of an entire 22 by 34 display case, you're blocking 40 to 60 pieces of a dealer's inventory from other people looking at it. So it's just little things like, do you mind if I set this here? Is that okay? And it's not a big deal. Just ask. And on that point too, everybody's favorite content creation, videos and pictures, and all that fun stuff. Just again, asking dealers if they're okay with it, asking dealers if you can film, if you can take pictures. Again, 9 out of 10 won't have a problem with it, but when you start to just shove cameras in display cases, or just if you're filming content in front of a dealer's booth and there's people that are trying to look at things, that can kind of just wear pretty thin with both the dealers and the attendees that are kind of in that same area. So again, it's just understanding that under kind of spatial awareness, situational awareness, things like that. And that's so. That would be
I wanted to add to that too. I thought of it's a bit of a turn on the worst, how to make a worst better. Every show I've ever been to, at least twice a day, somebody actually reports something that's lost. So just because you lose something or leave something doesn't necessarily mean somebody's going to take it. There's lots of great people. There's lots of people that'll bring it to the main stage and say, hey, I found this, or, some kid left this at my booth and I don't know who he is or how to find him. So if you have a case or a bag, even your backpack, put an identifier on there somewhere so that they can say, oh, this is Ivan, this is Justin 610 sports cards bag. Oh, we found this case that belongs to Dr. Beckett. Makes it so much easier for everybody then, because the main stage doesn't want to sit there and announce, we found a case. Right. Everybody's going to come for it. But at the same time, especially if you're there with your kids and they've got a box or a little case or something, odds are good they might forget it at some point, and somebody will see it. And if they say, oh, hey, this belongs to so-and-so, you can go find it and claim it somewhere much, much easier. Or they can even call you, and say, hey, if so-and-so is on the floor, come see us, versus 3 cards.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point too, and that is also, or that's kind of the benefit of one of the few benefits of social media. But the power of social media, even if it's just an individual card, there was, I think it was the one of the Chicago Nationals 4 or 5 years ago where somebody just accidentally left something at our table. I noticed it 30 minutes later after the person, whomever it was, had walked away, and so the owner had made a post on their socials saying that, I lost this, please be on the lookout. And I messaged them when I saw it and was like, we found this, just come by and grab it. That's and great. It was that easy. Yeah, exactly. It's not a guaranteed way to get, to find things, but being able to mobilize that many eyes on something, and this was something that was of a higher dollar value and very unique, so it did make it easier. But yeah, don't be afraid to ask for help. It happens.
Yeah, those are great points. And one of the things I was thinking for myself, a lot of people are carrying money with them, various amounts. I know that's always a conversation. People are like, how much money should I bring? It's like what you're comfortable with, and like how you hold it, how you're going to feel comfortable, secure. Like for myself, I know like with my cards, I get very antsy. So like I have a backpack. It like you said, Ivan, it's not the most comfortable thing. It gets hot, it gets sweaty, but I feel most secure having the ability to throw 2 straps on. And when I'm like at a dollar bin, I stick it right between my legs, right like just in front of me between my two toes. That's how I feel comfortable. And if I need to move to the side, I shuffle along with my bag. So there's a level of comfort of what you're going to feel safe and not be overly anxious with, because nobody wants to lose a card regardless of the value. It's a bummer when you pick up a new card and you're excited to go and, take a picture and share it with somebody, and then you're missing it,
Yeah. Yeah. And on the topic of just payments in general, cash is always going to be king. You're going to get your best deals, have your best leverage with cash. But plenty of dealers take PayPal, Venmo, Zelle, different forms of electronic payment. I mean, some of the credit card swipe options as well. So we've definitely advanced quite a ways from where we were 3, 4, 5 years ago in terms of the payments that dealers, or the payment types that dealers offer. But cash will always get you your best deals, which means, like you said, Jake, the more cash that you bring, the more cash you'll be responsible for. And if you need to get cash from an ATM or a bank before you go to the show and you don't want to travel with that cash, that's just another side quest that you have to budget your time to take care of, because the closest Wells Fargo is like 15, 20 minutes away. I think similar for Bank of America. So even just the simple task of running an errand to a bank can take an hour out of your day at the show.
Yeah, that's a great point. What else did we miss?
Hey, Jake, I got to go in just a minute, but let me just say on the idea of cash, I mean, my wife chided me because I said on my podcast that I carried $1,000 at the National, and she didn't realize my $1,000 in my pocket, I'm way below average. If they're going to rob somebody, it wouldn't be me, because that's low. There are 15-year-old kids that have a lot more than that in cash in their pocket. So, but I agree, cash is important. It's the simplest thing. I mean, there's all kinds of shenanigans. Maybe even there's shenanigans with cash, but my cash is good, and people seem to want to accept it, and I give it out sparingly.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point, because giving out sparingly makes a lot of sense, because it is such a valuable commodity that when it's gone, it's gone. Some dealers won't take cards. Some dealers won't take, and I mean cards like sports cards, right? Some dealers won't take PayPal. Some dealers won't take credit cards, but every dealer will take cash. So
they actually, Jake, should give you a cash discount. If you pay in cash, because they got the ready cash right there. It's like there's a credit card surcharge, there could be a cash discount
Mm.
because they love that cash because they can spend it just, on something else.
Anything.
Which leads to it's a very well-known tip, but I think everybody here can back me up. If you're there as a buyer, try to stay till Sunday.
Mm.
Because the dealers, and try to have some cash on Sunday too.
Right.
That's the best combo because the dealers have to bring whatever's still there home.
Mm.
So they want to, that day, there's no parties Sunday night. They just want to get as much stuff turned into cash as possible. So, again, it's pretty obvious, but just in case it hasn't been made clear or no one's ever told you it, if you're there for buying and you can make it there Sunday, that's when you're going to succeed. Now, don't hold off too, because there can be that one of one, that card you really want that somebody else buys on Saturday. But do keep in mind, Sunday is the best day to buy.
Mm. And to that point as well, a little bit, it's really important to just understand budget management as well. Again, it follows a lot of the same principles as time management, but we all have a certain amount of money to work with, whether it's 500, 5,000. You can add as many zeros as you want to, but we've all got what we can spend. And as I mentioned, every single time you walk in there, especially the first day, you're gonna be running around like a madman, and everything's going to look fresh. There won't be many holes in the display cases, so you'll think you're getting all the best steals in the world, and before you know it, you could have spent 90% of your budget in the first 60 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And then you look at what you actually bought, and you're like, oh God, what have I done? So in order to try and get back to even, you're maybe selling things a little bit cheaper than you want to, or you're compromising on you're moving the goalpost, so to speak, on what's actually PC now versus what it was when you came in. So just understand that if you get a little bit behind the 8 ball with your cash, then you might start making certain moves that you might not necessarily want to make. So again, there's certainly reasons to spend it all or spend a lot of it in a short amount of time, because the National's the best place to see the stuff that you thought you would never see. So if that does happen, great, pull the trigger. But just understand that. If you come in with that set amount of money and you spend a lot of that money, you're going to have to find a way to get that money back if that's what you want to do. And I've been in that position, and I've seen other people in that position too, and it's not terribly pleasant or easy to get back that money that you're looking for.
So I have a selfish question that maybe can be the closing, maybe let Dr. Jim go. But I just want to know, because I'm going to be there, where can I see each of you at the National?
Singles Club.
Singles Club. That's where Dr. Beckett's going to be?
Some of the time. I mean, I try to spread it around, guys. But that's a good anchor point. They're always have some good stuff, and there's always a good group of guys to hang with there too.
Yeah, for me, I'm just running around. So my thing always is like there's always people that I wanted to see. Always 2 years of it. There's always people that I've wanted to see that I don't get to see, and then afterwards, I'm messaging them like I'm bummed that I missed you, type of thing. So I try like to start now, like setting up like, okay, and this is actually a tip, Dr. Beckett, that you'd provided me, is trying to set up dinners and say like, hey, let's, it doesn't have to be anything elaborate. It can be like, hey, let's go to Taco Bell tonight, but setting that up in advance, so I know, hey, Friday night I'm going to go to Taco Bell, Saturday night I'm going to go to McDonald's. It can be, or it can be, hey, I'm going to go to some other fancy restaurant. Like it can be whatever you want, but setting those up in advance is one thing that I've tried doing. But yeah, other than that,
that sounds a little Atlantic City though. In Chicago, at least do White Castle.
I've never eaten at a White. You see, you're telling me all these things I need to try in Chicago that I've never tried before. I'm getting hungry.
Do it once.
Justin, are you actually setting up there this year? Or?
Yeah, so I'll be set up again. I just had to very quickly pull up my booth numbers because shame on me, I still haven't committed them to memory like I have the past 10 years. But it's booths 3410 and 3311. So we are in the new part of the floor. So you go in on the right entrance instead of the left. And then we are just on the the eastern edge of the second corporate pavilion. So pretty close right there when you walk into the new entrance on the right. And it'll be, I mean, I'm mainly high-end basketball stuff, but it'll be mostly basketball, but all 4 sports across the 2 booths, which is kind of crazy because this is the first year I've gotten 2.
Now, a couple of questions, Justin, that I just thought of. Do you know, is there like any sort of a cut through between the new space and the old space, or do you have to kind of go through the lobby and go into the other entrance?
No, I believe I just pulled up the floor plan again. I'm closing out these windows because I'm compulsive about my tabs. No, you can traverse the entire show without having to cut through the middle.
Okay.
I think you can cut through the case break pavilion is probably the easiest way to do that. But also, I mean, there's going to be a ton of foot traffic of people just going from one entrance to the other too, because I think that's shortest distance in certain cases. But yeah, you can move around the entire show floor based on this map without having to go outside, which is good because that's going to be a nightmare with badge stuff.
Oh yeah,
for attendees and security alike.
One thing also that I just thought of that I tried last year, it worked well for me, so I'm going to do it again this year, is I took that map that's on the national website and put like little icons on the booths that I want to make sure that I go to, or like people's booths that I know are, Justin's on there and stuff like that. So that helped me last year be able to traverse in especially like that first day. I want to make sure that if those booths are ones that have cards I typically want to look for, I know where they are and I get to them first, so I can check their inventory out before other people maybe. So that's a tip that I can share that worked well for me last year.
Yeah, the more preparation you can do ahead of time, the happier you'll be when the week finally gets here, regardless of how detailed or high level that is.
Now, so I think to close it out, Dr. Beckett, you got to run. Ivan, you had a juicy tip that you were dangling that you may or may not share. Do you want to close this out with that, or do you want to hold that off and share something else?
I mean, that's one way to put it. It is a juicy tip. I like to remind people, if you have too much Portillo's or too much Gibson steak in too short of a time period, remember, there are a lot of restrooms right there. There's restrooms right off of the entranceways, but the conference center is really big. So if you really need some private time, the trick is just walk around the convention a little ways, walk outside of the national area, and you can find some restrooms that maybe haven't been visited as much, and you can have a little bit more private time, a little more comfort, without having to go all the way back to your hotel necessarily. So that is the possibly the most life-saving tip that I may be able to provide at the National. So, and I'll be anchored in the Breaker Pavilion with Midwest box breaks and signatures for soldiers, alternating time between them. So, if you need directions to the nearest, furthest, slightly clean, slightly private area, stop by and see me, and I'll help you.
Thanks, Ivan.
And you might run into some of the other convention goers too. Maybe a lot of times there's a tattoo convention that overlaps in one of the smaller side rooms, and there is a pornography convention that's typically the weekend before. So thank God we don't have to overlap with sports cards and porn, or else that might be a very strange weekend for a lot of attendees.
Fair enough.
That would be interesting. Awesome. Well, I think that's as much as we can get into for this year. If there's any questions that you have that we didn't touch on, I think you can probably get a hold of most of us. So you want to go around and share where people can get a hold of us if they have questions after the fact.
People just send stuff to me at drjamesbeckett@gmail.com, and I'll either address it individually or put it on my podcast.
I'm on all social media platforms as WatchTheBreaks. So easy to find.
And easiest for me is Instagram, just 610 Sports Cards. I'm not from Philadelphia That's not what the 610 is. So now you know.
Awesome. Thank you all. I can't wait to see you in Chicago in just a few short weeks.
Thanks, Jake. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Jake. You bet.